Visions, dreams, and goals, these are more than just words in your head and on paper. Making them part of your reality requires action, flexibility, and grace. Hello, 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 and welcome to More Than Money, a podcast where we have nuanced conversations about money, business, and life, where we take the time to explore the human side of money because success with money is never just about the numbers. I'm your host, Jaquette Timmons, and I am really, really glad that you are joining me today. And some of you may be joining and tuning in on YouTube. And although we have been producing and creating content for the More Than Money podcast since April of 2019, this is the very first time that we are also simultaneously broadcasting it on YouTube. So welcome to our very first hybrid episode 159. And to catch up on all the others, listen in from your favorite podcast platform, More Than Money. But let's get into today's show. I love to travel. I love to fly. And I absolutely love the window seat. And I love the window seat because it gives me an opportunity to work on my photography skills and to take pictures as we fly from point A to point B. And I have the awesome pleasure of spending the new year and bringing in 2023 and kicking off the new year out of the country in Merida, Mexico. And on our way back from Merida, I grabbed a photo, or I saw, I looked out my window and I was like, oh man, that'd make a beautiful photo. And I took a shot. Now, the resolution of it is not that great, but you can see the image if you'd like, if you go to my website, jaquettetimmons.com. And as soon as I snapped the photo, it occurred to me that there is a lot in common with an airplane getting from point A to point B, your 2023 goals, and also the impact of financial trauma. And at first blush, I realized that this may seem like a really odd concatenation to explore. Yet, when it comes to putting in the work to manifest your goals, and the same for me when it comes to my goals, there's really much that you and I share in common with pilots who are navigating getting a plane from point A to point B, including how they respond to turbulence. And so that's what I wanted to explore in today's episode. And I want to first start with all of the things that happen before you even take flight. So before you even board a plane, right, the pilot and his or her co-pilot, they've created a very detailed flight plan. And this plan takes into consideration a multitude of variables like the weather where you are, the weather where you are going, what's the weather in between those 2 points. It takes into consideration the fuel that you have, the time of day of your departure, as well as the time of day of your arrival, the expected length of your flight, and then so much more, right? And so that's even before you as a passenger board the plane. And then there's what happens after you've boarded, but before you even back away from the gate, AKA your starting point. And this is where the pilot will announce the destination, as a little bit of a reminder to which the plane is traveling and the approximate arrival time. And this announcement also tends to remind you of where you are going, AKA your ending point, even if it's the case that that is not your final destination. So like even for me, when I left New York, it was from LaGuardia first to Miami, and then from Miami to Merida. But when they give you these details, they don't necessarily give you specifics of how you will get there. There are several parallels to draw from what I've just described in terms of what happens before you even board the plane, and then what happens before that plane leaves the gate. First is the fact that there's a lot that goes on before you even get in the air. And to me, the same is true whenever we're talking about your goals, and in particular, since we're in 2023, talking about your 2023 goals. So for example, you know your starting point, you know your ending point, you know the point that you are striving toward. You might even be aware of a few milestones in between. And even though you don't know all of the details of how you will accomplish your goals, there is definitely a lot that happens before you even start to work on them. So that's the first thing. The second is that the planning work of the pilot is invisible to you. All that stuff that happened before you boarded the plane, you didn't see that. And I bring that to your attention because the same is true when it comes to your goals. Your planning won't be noticed by many, even those who may likely benefit from your vision, from your goals, and from the effort that you put toward them. So let's think of that as all of the things that happen before you take flight. Now, what happens once you're up in the air? So you and I are all settled into our seats. Maybe we're reading a book, maybe we're watching a movie, or working, or sleeping, or chatting it up with your seatmate. While we're doing all of that, the pilot, and again, his or her co-pilot, they're doing a lot of work while they're up in the air, right? They're scanning the horizon for traffic. They are communicating with air traffic controllers and the flight crew, and we don't hear those conversations. They're making sure that the equipment is working as it should. They're calculating their fuel burns, as they say in the industry. They're confirming the weather conditions and confirming that they haven't changed, or at least haven't changed dramatically from when they actually sat down to look at the weather conditions for preparing the flight plan. They're making navigational decisions, sometimes mid-flight, that may vary from the original flight plan. And along the way, they are managing our expectations and therefore our behavior when the plane, for example, encounters turbulence. And of course, there is so much more. You know, I look at this as a really incomplete list of activities, but it's an incomplete list of activities that reminds you and me that even with the automation of some aspects of flying, piloting a plane is far from a passive undertaking, nor is it a solo endeavor. It requires a team, right? The pilot, the co-pilot, the flight crew, the folks in air traffic controller, the folks on the ground before we leave, the folks on the ground when we arrive, and all of them are working together to ensure that we arrive at our destination safely. So it's not a passive endeavor. It's not a solo endeavor. And pilots also, anticipate that the original flight plan may need to be altered, and it may need to be altered in an instant. And given that I live in New York City, an example that always comes to me with regard to that is Captain Sully, right? Pilots always have to have a backup plan, and a backup plan ready to be implemented. And talk about having a backup plan ready to be implemented and safely landing all of those people on the Hudson. Like, hello. But again, my point is this: they don't anticipate a flight plan that is going to go smoothly. They prepare for something to need to be altered. And I bring all of this to your attention because when it comes to your goals, and in my case, when it comes to my goals, you and I, we are the pilots. And as you already know, there is nothing passive about going after your goals. Thus, the equivalent of scanning the horizon is aligning each of your goals to the vision that you have for your life, for your business, and for your money. So my question for you here is, what is your system for doing this? What is your system for scanning the horizon? Who is on your team? Who do you need to enlist for support with manifesting your goals? Have you communicated to them what you need them to know and what you need them to do to best help you? What type of equipment do you need? Maybe you don't have all of the fancy, tech that is a cockpit is outfitted with, but you do need some sort of equipment. Sometimes that equipment takes the form of technology or software. So is what you are currently using, is that sufficient, or will you need to tweak or upgrade anything as you work toward manifesting your 2023 goals? If we think about it through a non-tech lens, have you created a checklist for your check-ins and what's going to be your routine for checking in terms of how are things going, and do you need to alter your plan? So what's the equipment that you need to do that? You may not be burning fuel in the same way that a plane burns fuel, but you do burn some fuel when it comes to achieving your goals. You are burning something. It may be money that you're burning. It may be energy. It may be creativity or time or a combination or of any or all of these resources. How are you tracking the fuel that you'll need and that you are using and thus burning? And when we think about the weather conditions, for me, in the context of our conversation right now, that is your surroundings. Your surroundings in terms of family and friends, your home, your clients, your vendors, your money in general. For those of you that are listening as entrepreneurs and small business owners, your revenue and cash flow very specifically. And so for each of these areas of surroundings, what are your systems for managing when they change in both expected and unexpected ways? And, it's one thing to have a goal, and it's quite another to create a plan to manifest it. And more often than not, though, as I've already alluded, plans very rarely unfold as you initially envisioned. Some variable is bound to change to cause you to modify your initial plan. And just like the pilot never, leaves the gate without having a plan B, in your case, what's your plan B? What's your plan B? What's your plan C? And possibly even what is your plan D? And what's going to be the tripwire that will require you to actually put that plan into place? So for every goal that you have and the initial game plan that you've created, the roadmap to get you from point A to point B, have you prepared your backup plan for that? Related to that, is pilots anticipate turbulence. And the question for you is, do you prepare for challenges, i.e. turbulence, that you will inevitably bump up against as you go from having a goal that's unfulfilled to eventually reaching a point where you've either hit a major milestone in manifesting that goal, or you can now claim that you have achieved it? And so just like the pilot knows that it's not necessarily, you ideally want it to be a smooth, plane ride, but there may be times, when they say, hey, we're about to hit some turbulence, put on your seatbelt. There may be times when that happens. And so when it comes to your goals, what are the turbulent moments that you might anticipate? And then also, and this comes back to something that I said at the very top, when it comes to your goals, turbulence can look like a number of different things. Challenges can look like a number of different things. And one of those ways that it can look is the financial trauma that you are carrying. So how are the things that you are afraid of, the mistakes that you've made, the decisions that you are not proud of, again, as they pertain to money? how are they, and maybe not so much, maybe it's even broader than money, but how are these things silently yet profoundly affecting how you approach your goals? And I talked about financial trauma in a previous episode, and we'll make a link and share with you the episode number because I don't have that off the top of my head. But I think it's important to recognize what financial traumas you might be carrying with you and carrying into 2023, and how they may be overshadowing some of the goals that you have in ways that you may not even be aware. So my question is, what are you prepared to do to get out of your own way? And that may mean confronting your turbulence, your challenges, and that also may mean paying a little bit more attention and being a little more tender, if you will, when it comes to your financial trauma. So that's all of the things that happen while we are up in the air. But now it's time to prepare for landing. And you know, you're always getting ready to land because the pilot will say, flight attendants, prepare for landing, right? And they want your seats to be up, the trays to be up. They want everything to be cleared away. They want you to put away the electronic devices that you've been working on in between. And that's in case something happens, that they can, get people out, evacuate them with a little bit more ease than if those things were not adhered to, if those rules were not adhered to. So prepare for landing. For me, flying is otherworldly, and it's one of the reasons why I really do love sitting in the window seat, because it just reminds me of, in the big scheme of things, just how small we humans are in the grand scheme of things. And it just reminds me of the awe that I am in when it comes to the airplane itself, and with the work of everyone, particularly the pilots and the crew, both in flight and on the ground, and the air traffic controllers. I'm just in awe of them and their work, and with everything that has to go right in order to get me to my destination. And so when you hear flight attendants prepare for landing, you know you are about to land. Yet the flight really isn't over until the plane is at the gate and people have begun to disembark from the plane. So regarding this whole analogy that I have been utilizing, anchoring an airplane to help us talk about our goals and to help us recognize the turbulence, the challenges, and perhaps even the financial trauma that may impact that, preparing for the landing, to me, is the equivalent of prepare for success. And so there's a saying in the airline industry, stay ahead of your plane. And this is pilot talk for always being a step ahead at every step of the journey, which includes before you even get in the air. And the way I see it, it is so apropos for you and me when it comes to goals too. So if we tweak that a little bit, stay ahead of the plane becomes stay ahead of your goals. And that may be a really good mantra to heed throughout the year. So for those of you listening on your favorite audio platform for podcasts, thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you that are watching our very first hybrid episode on YouTube, thank you as well. I have really, really enjoyed my time with you today. And again, I just thank you for that. And if you'd like to show appreciation for the podcast, or this particular topic, maybe you even had an aha that you want to share with me, then send me a message. Send me a message on Instagram. We read all of the messages. And if you want to show appreciation for this podcast or this particular episode, leave a comment below. Or if you are on Apple Podcasts, please leave a review and a rating, because that does help us to reach more people. And of course, we do read them. And if you'd like to buy me a coffee, you can do that by going to buymeacoffee.com/Jacquette. Sorry about that. Let me do that again. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/Jaquette. So thank you once more for joining me today. I'll be back next week, and I hope you will too. Until then, remember, it's about more than money.